Hi, I'm Julie from Green Acres Nursery and Supply, and today we're going to be talking all about trees. Now for those of you who've been patiently waiting all through summer with these triple-digit seasons and just been planning and planning, it's time to put down the pen and pick up the shovel because we're officially in fall and it is time to plant. The longer you can have your plants in the ground before summer, the better, which makes fall ideal because here in the valley we have such mild winters. It's a really good time to take advantage of this growing season and the spring growing season before summer hits. Now, even though you have the green light to plant whatever you want, today we're just going to focus on trees. Now, since trees are such a good time to plant, there are really big decisions. There's a lot of things to consider when you're planting a tree. The first thing you do, once you've found the perfect spot in your yard where you decide you want a shade tree, you need to do a couple things before you come into the nursery. The first thing you want to do is to measure. So wherever your trunk is going to be, you want to measure how far away it is from the house. Because the mission of a good shade tree is a tree that grows nice and big and casts shade on your house. You don't want it to grow nice and big and then grow over your house. When branches grow over your house, if you have too big of a tree too close, it becomes like a freeway for rats to easily get access to your attic. And if the tree ever gets sick, you have to worry about sick branches over your house, which can get very dangerous. And you don't want leaves constantly dropping on your roof because that hurts the integrity of your roof. But trees are a great way to bring up your property value as long as they're planted correctly. Now, after you've measured how close it is to your house, you want to make sure you notice how close it is to surrounding cement areas because we don't want the roots to hurt the cement. So if you have a really small area, we're going to get you a tree with a smaller root system. If it's a big area, we can go for the big guys. Now, after that's done, remember to look up. A lot of people forget to look up. Make sure you check for power lines above so you don't get anything that's going to grow into them. And also pay attention to the roof of your house, whether or not you're going to have solar panels. If you have solar panels or plan on getting solar panels, make sure you consider that because we don't want a tree that'll shade them out. After you've looked up, you've looked around, you want to call 811 and look underneath. It's very important to call 811. It's a free service. They come out and they mark where all of your pipes are and stuff, so that way when you go to dig, we don't make any big accidents because big trees require big holes and that can get kind of dicey if you don't know where your stuff is. So after you have all that information, it's time to come into the nursery and start picking out a tree. Now, when you come into the nursery, the first thing we're going to ask you is if you want a deciduous tree or an evergreen tree. And it's important to know what those words mean. Deciduous means that the tree's going to lose its leaves in the fall and have that big drop. The benefit of a deciduous tree is that when it gets nice and big in the sun during the summertime, it's going to cast shade on your house and keep it cool. And then in the wintertime, it's going to drop all its leaves and then it's going to allow the sun to shine on your house again. So they're great for utility bills. But you do have the leaves to pick up in fall, but they give you all the pretty fall color. Some of them will bloom in the spring, just flowers like the red buds or the purple ponies, but they're really good trees. So the other type of tree is evergreen trees. Evergreen trees are trees that keep their leaves all year round, so you don't have that big drop. They're great for privacy. If you got some, some people kind of live in a fishbowl where a lot of two-story houses are looking into their yard, that's where an evergreen tree would come into play. And a big misconception is that when I say evergreen trees, a lot of people think Christmas trees, like this deodar cedar right behind me. There's a lot more evergreens than just conifers like this with pine needles. For example, I got the Japanese blueberry tree here. This guy is so thick that you can't tell life exists on the other side of it. It gets 30 feet wide, 30 to 60 feet tall, and then you can't see through them. And what's nice about these guys is when a leaf does start dying on it, because they do still have to flush through their leaves all year round, it'll turn bright orange before they fall off. So you always have these little flickers of orange throughout the tree, but it's nice and thick. It just blocks out anything that you're trying to block out, whether it's like a cell tower or a neighbor. But if you have a smaller yard and you did all the correct measurements like we talked about earlier, then there's other options for you. For example, I have this red tip Photinia tree. What's nice about these guys is that they grow 4 feet a year, so they're crazy fast, but they only get 10 to 15 feet tall and wide. So if you have a smaller yard, this guy comes into play really good. And a cool thing about this guy, he's a bush turned into a tree, so the roots aren't real invasive. So if you have, a smaller area with cement, the roots aren't going to cause damage. And they turn bright red in spring and fall, and they're green in summer and winter. So it still gives you color and interest. You don't have to lose out on that just because it's an evergreen. And we have way more options than just these guys. So after you decided whether you need a deciduous tree or an evergreen tree, the next question we're going to ask you is whether you want a shade tree or more of an accent tree. A shade tree is meant to help with utility bills, give you some protection, or if you need a privacy tree to help block out the neighbors. Accent trees are more of just a decorative piece in your yard. That would be things like the Palo Verde Desert Museum, which is very lacy and see-through, but they have a lot of really interesting bone structure to them, and they get these pretty gold flowers all throughout it in the summertime that attract a lot of pollinators, which is great. There's also a really cool tree called an Arbutus marita. These guys have a permanent red bark to them that's really pretty. It gives you contrast off the dark green leaves that they have. And they get these pretty pink flowers that hang down like bells, and after the flowers go away, it gets this fruit that almost look like they're sugar-coated. They're yellow, green, orange, and red little clusters. And it just looks really decorative in your yard. It's a beautiful tree, and it still gets about 30 feet tall, so it'll still give you privacy, but it's just a beautiful, more of an accent tree if you get it multi-trunked. If you're looking for a shade tree, then there's a few things that you want to look for. I get a lot of customers who want me to pick out the best tree, but let me show you what I'm looking for so you guys know what to look for at home when you're picking out a good shade tree. So the first thing I do when I look for a good shade tree is I look at the graft. The graft is at the bottom that the rootstock connects to your actual tree. The straighter it is, the better. If it has a little bit of a hook, that's okay, but if it's real extreme, that's not good. That's gonna be a weaker tree. Then I want that graft to lead into a nice straight trunk that grows into a nice straight lead. The lead is just the trunk growing straight up. You don't want it to look like a slingshot up top because then your tree could split. And then after that, I look at the branches. I want good 45-degree angle branches on all my trees. And you know, trees are just like humans. Not every aspect of it's gonna be perfect. So you are gonna have some branches that won't be growing at 45 degrees, but as long as it's showing the habit of most of them growing at 45, that's a really good, strong tree. And you want to see branches growing on all sides of the trunk because that shows you that the roots are good on all sides of the trunk. So now that you have found the perfect tree and you got the perfect spot, it's time to start planting. So the first thing you do is you're going to dig the hole twice the width of the pot that it's in, but the same depth. And then if you want to go deeper, you can, but not right underneath the root ball. You just want to go deeper around the root ball so that way your tree doesn't sink. If you have that pillowy, soft soil right underneath your tree, the tree can sink and then soil gets onto the crown of the tree and then you can get what's called crown rot, and we don't want that. Now it's time to amend the soil. So you could be looking at things like planting mix and fir mulch if you have a lot of clay in your soil, and throwing in some worm castings is always a great idea, but you want to mix it 50-50 with your native soil. A way that I kind of describe it is that when you plant a tree, it's kind of like going to the gym for the first time. You can't lift 500 pounds right away. It's the same for the tree. If you put in that good sit on the couch eating cheesecake soil that we sell, it grows nice and easy, then it hits the hard soil, native soil, and it goes, ooh, I want to eat cheesecake, and grows into itself. When you mix it 50-50 with our real heavy clay rock soil, it gets a taste of what's to come, and then when it gets to that real native soil, it knows what to do and actually get established, and you have a much stronger tree.
Answer the question on the screen in the comments below for your chance to win a $25 gift card to Green Acres Nursery and Supply. 4 winners will be chosen during our virtual Fall Festival that's going on from September 21st through 27th, 2020. Be sure to check the comments on Sunday, September 27th to see if you won. Happy fall!
So after you do that, you're going to get your Sure Start, which is this guy. This stuff's amazing. Every time you plant, use it. There's never a reason to not use it. It's a good starter fertilizer, has mycorrhiza, attaches to the roots, makes the roots grow faster, get established faster. You just follow the instructions. If you have a 15-gallon, I believe it's 2 cups. No, 1 cup. So 1 cup for a 15-gallon. You're gonna put that at the bottom of the hole, or you can just rub it straight onto your root system to make sure that mycorrhiza attaches to it. And you're gonna put your tree in the hole. Then you're going to amend your soil, which means put all the good soil with your native soil. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of just putting the good soil in the hole and not your native soil, and that's something you don't want to do because your tree needs to acclimate to the soil. So if your soil's in the good sitting on the couch eating cheesecake soil, what'll happen is it will hit the native soil and it goes, ooh, I want to eat cheesecake, and it grows into it. So when you mix it 50-50 with our native soil, it gives it a taste of what's to come. It helps it get used to it, so when it hits that native soil, it can actually get established and start growing really good. Now, another thing to remember that a lot of people forget, this stake that is attached to your tree when you buy it from the nursery isn't supposed to stay with your tree. You're supposed to cut it off, or otherwise these ties that are on it are going to cut too tight and it's going to damage your tree and it's going to make it weaker. It's just to get you from point A to point B without breaking your trunk. But remove it right when you get home. After that, you've amended your soil, you got it in the hole, you need to put tree stakes in. That are these guys. You're going to pound them into the ground about 18 inches on either side of your tree, and then you're going to put the straps just around them enough to keep it to where it can sway a little bit, but it doesn't keep it totally straight, and you don't want it real tight because that'll actually strangle your tree and hurt it. So nice and loose, but enough to where it won't, blow over. But when the tree has that power to move a little bit, that's what strengthens up the wood and gives you a stronger tree. And you don't want the root ball to shift to where it won't grow right, but you want it to move just a tiny bit, just because that helps the roots get established better and get stronger. So after a year, you're gonna take those tree stakes out. So for those of you who have those and it's been 5 years, please go take them out right now. You don't need them, they're all done. It's just little training wheels just for a year. I hope all this helped with all the tips and tricks on how to plant a tree properly in your yard. And please come into any of our 5 locations. We got Folsom, Elk Grove, Sacramento, Roseville, and Rockland. And no question's a dumb question. Please come in, and happy planting.